All right, greetings again, my 102 students. So this second recap for the day is going to be looking at citation and talking about blending sources. If you're looking for the study skills discussion, that is the other recap video. So with your research papers, one of the most important things you want to do is give multiple perspectives about your topics. And with those multiple perspectives, you want to blend them together in your writing so that we can see them juxtaposed next to each other. Now, when you're doing this, you want to integrate your citation in that process. So, for example, you might write a sentence that says, according to author A, this is the way the world works. Or, you might give a quote. And, with a quote, the specific MLA citation would be that quote with the author's name and citation in parentheses following your quote, followed by a period. But sometimes you want people to know who the author is. You want to know where this source is coming from. So you might say something like, according to author B, who happens to be a professor at X university, these are the, and then quote. And so that way you've established this is your source, this is why we listen to this source, and here is what that source has to say. Now, when we start blending the sources for the perspectives, it's important to bear in mind that the types of perspectives you use will depend on your topic. So, for example, if you have a topic where there is serious debate as to whether one thing is true versus a different thing, then you're going to want to contrast them. So, for example, you might say, according to A, this is why this is happening. On the other hand, B disagrees because of X. All right. And then after that, you have room to give your analysis. You could say something along the lines of, I agree with A because in my experience, this is what I have seen. When I think about what B is saying, I see why B says it because da-da-da-da-da, but here's an example I've seen that didn't work according to what B is describing. And so with this, when I talk about finding your research sources, like I said, you need to have the right number and the right type of outside sources, but your personal experience is also important. And so definitely feel free to include your thoughts, especially when you have sources that disagree with each other. Now, with that, it is not your job as an English 102 student. It is not a requirement to try persuading people of something. It is certainly okay if you do, but for me, the most important thing is that you're getting these different perspectives out there. You're able to show the different perspectives on an issue. Now, let's take a quick example. Gun laws, for example. You could say, many individuals feel that we should be restricting access to firearms because of some violent events we've seen, especially with school shootings or racially motivated shootings. And then, on the other hand, others feel that a broader interpretation of the Second Amendment is important because, they believe that having more individuals armed with firearms would allow good people to stop bad people from committing serious acts of violence. Now, as I'm talking about, these two perspectives, they are very different. They are completely disagree with each other, but it's on an issue like this, it's important to bring up both of them in a respectful way to show an understanding of those different perspectives. Now, this is not to say that all of your sources will necessarily be good ones. On a topic like this, sources will be very biased. And it is up to you as the writer to describe these sources, talk about whether or not they are useful, what biases they may or may not have. This does not require you to say both sides are equally good, right? This does not require you to agree with all of your sources. If you disagree with a source, I definitely want you to talk about that. Now, on the other hand, you may have a topic where there is no major disagreement, all right? So, for example, if you were talking about, the example from class was the JWST, the James Webb Space Telescope. You may have some, perspective of someone saying, hey, the JWST is really a great tool for seeing the age of the universe because it's able to detect those very, very distant galaxies that are extremely redshifted. They are so redshifted, in fact, that the Hubble Space Telescope can't even detect them. And then another scientist, according to the scientist C, JWST is important because it will help us see the atmospheric composition of exoplanets and help us use the light spectra coming off the atmospheres to detect if there is oxygen and if there are signs of life on these planets. And so that right there, those two perspectives, they don't disagree with each other. They're both saying the James Webb Telescope is a good thing, but they're giving different reasons why. And so that is different. That is the multiple perspectives I'm looking for. Now, another thing to bear in mind is that there are some topics where there may be serious disagreements, but one side or the other may have been seriously debunked, or one side or the other is not worth considering. Okay, so if we're talking about whether the Earth is round or whether the Earth is flat, it is pretty well established that the Earth is round. The flat Earth theory was debunked literally thousands of years ago. And it took a while for the world to actually accept this. But it is established fact. If you were writing about the geology of the Earth and how the crust is over the mantle, which is over the different layers of the core, a paper like that would not need any reference to, say, the Flat Earth Society. You would be writing about the Earth, giving the different perspectives of geologists, maybe talking about how we use earthquake data and how we use volcanoes and how we study rocks to determine the age of the Earth. Someone who's saying the Earth is flat, their opinion would not be a relevant perspective. Even though they're disagreeing, their opinion has been so debunked that you don't need to include it. You don't need to address it or counter it. Now, on the other hand, there are some topics where there is one side that has been thoroughly debunked, but that opinion is still popular. And so you might need to address it simply because it's so popular. So let's take global warming as an example. Last I checked, 97% of climate scientists agree that global warming is happening. That survey of scientists was a few years ago. And since that time, we've seen more forest fires, more sea level rise, more days of record high heat temperatures. And so it is likely that even more climate scientists now accept that global warming is happening. And the majority of those agree that it's caused by human influence. All the fossil fuel we've been burning is putting CO2 in the atmosphere. The methane being released from our landfills, that also contributes as a greenhouse gas. And so we have very, very solid evidence that global warming is happening and that human civilization is causing it to accelerate faster. Now, there are some natural causes that are also contributing to it. The Siberian tundra is warming up. A lot of methane trapped in that soil is being released into the atmosphere. The There are people who debate whether or not the sun is heating up and causing this change. Recent studies indicate the sun is not significantly impacting our climate, but it's a possibility. All right, it is something where I could, it might be worth noting. Here is a person who is saying that the sun is increasing the temperature of the atmosphere and it has nothing to do with fossil fuels. It would be important to debunk that person in your paper, because there are a lot of people out there who have clamped onto this myth that it's the sun and not the fossil fuels. And so you might talk about the gigatons of carbon dioxide that gets pumped in the atmosphere every day. It might be important to bring up soil samples and ice cores that indicate what the CO2 concentrations have been and how those relate to what the temperature was dating back millions of years, and how those compare to the present day, where we have significantly higher carbon dioxide levels, massively higher carbon dioxide levels. And because of these massively higher levels, the atmosphere is holding in a lot more heat, and the atmospheric temperature is going up. Ocean temperatures are going up. And it would be good to cite a number of scientific sources showing this: the satellite data, the airport temperature data, and things like that. Now, when you have a topic like this is not to say that you should fully and automatically agree with every single source that agrees with your position. Okay, so key example: urban temperatures have gone up significantly. They take temperatures at airports globally every day. Those have been tracked. The problem with that data is that urban centers hold in heat because they don't have the foliage of trees and the soil for gathering water and runoff. And so these big oceans of pavement, they are expanding. Our population is increasing. Airports that used to be surrounded by trees and grasslands and pastures are now surrounded by cities. And so those airport temperatures are not an accurate representation of global temperatures. And so it would be good to say, hey, our airport temperatures are going up. Some folks dispute them because of this. All right? But even if we discard the temperatures at airports, if we look at satellite data, and the satellites are scanning the entire globe without regard for where the cities are versus where the rural areas are, we see that the satellite data indicates the global temperature has increased noticeably over the past 50 years, over the past century. And so when you're looking at your research data, one of the reasons that the rhetorical analysis is important is because your rhetorical analysis tells us whether your sources are reliable and to what degree we can trust them. So, with that, I hope that this has been a helpful video. As always, please let me know in case of questions or comments. As I mentioned before, if you have questions on your papers, especially the one due this week, go ahead and text that to me so that I can give you a quicker reply. So with that, have a good rest of the day, and I will see you guys next Tuesday.